everyone, and welcome back to another LMA podcast. This episode is going to be a little bit different. We normally have a particular topic that we will discuss, whether it be UFOs or like the last episode that we kind of spoke about and got distracted with politics of all things, urban legends, and we might talk about ghosts, all that sort of stuff. This is going to be an ongoing series, sporadic series. It's not going to be releasing a new episode of this series every single week, but it's going to be something that we're going to throw in every now and then just to mix it up a little bit. We are calling this episode, this series is going to be called Eating Soup with a Fork. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is it called Eating Soup with a Fork? That's a dumb idea. It is a stupid idea because the soup is going to fall through back into your bowl and it's going to take a long ass time to get anywhere. But the idea behind this is we're going to be asking deep philosophical questions and discussing them and having debate because there's probably going to be somewhere we've got different points of view, and it's going to be all about challenging our current ideologies, our belief systems, all of that sort of stuff. So naturally, we are drinking whilst recording this particular episode, and this will be an ongoing thing where we take a beverage, discuss deep, meaningful stuff. So, Tim, why don't you kick us off? What are you drinking on this fine afternoon?
As always, for those of you who are already following along at home, I'm drinking the good old Baron Smitty rum.
Very nice. It's a good drop,
as
that
always. One. Oh, it's a lovely drop.
And I see that your glass has a burger on it.
I may use the same glass over and over again as my drinking glass. It happens to be one of the McDonald's ones. One of those ones that's, it's not meant to like tip over or anything because it's got the little sort of bubble on the bottom of it.
So the perfect glass.
Very much so.
Mr. Vince, what is your beverage of choice for this afternoon?
I thought I'd lash out, so I poured myself just a couple of sips worth of my Glenfiddich 15.
Ooh.
Which is delicious.
Wow. I feel like my Glenlivet Founders Reserve is subpar to a 15. Woo!
Jeez.
I bought it for Carly and then decided I was going to drink it all. So,
As you do. As you do. That's fair. Okay, so the idea for this came about, realistically came about with merch design, but I'll talk about that later, possibly. Back when I was at school, I did philosophy back in high school. We did a little bit of philosophy, not a lot, but the main question that I can remember from that, what makes a person a person? Is the general gist of the question. Is it consciousness? Is it appearance? Is it something else? And basically the conversation that we had at school boiled down to somehow a brain. And the consciousness within said brain is what makes a person a person. I was like, no. The whole time all I can remember from that is thinking that was stupid. That's not a brain is not a person. A brain is a brain. What makes a brain into a part of a person is what surrounds it. So you got the skull, all the fluids within there, the head, and they were saying, oh, if someone loses a limb, are they no longer a person? I thought, well, okay, so you can boil it down to a torso and a head with all the bits and pieces on the inside. That's my view. But that was the start of this philosophical question that I can remember. I'm sure we discussed a whole bunch of other things. I just don't remember them because it was so long ago. But I pose this question to you two. What do you believe makes a person a person?
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is. We're going to start off big.
No doing it simple here.
Nah, look, not here to fuck spiders.
I love that saying from you Aussies. I actually, to go completely off topic, I actually had to look that one up when I started on Tinder, and that's like, yeah, fuck spiders. What the
I thought it was like a common saying that everyone knew.
No.
But yeah. So what makes a person a person? What in your mind, what how do you classify that?
So from a heavily logical, reasoned, cold point of view, I think the best argument for what makes a person is it is the very specific, particular, and absolutely unique person to person, individual to individual web of neurons in their brain.
So it's the stuff. So you believe it's the stuff inside the brain that makes a person a person?
I think from a very unspiritual place, yes. Ultimately, a person boils down to the way that their neurons all construct together, the way that their experiences form the formation of those neurons. Their environment changes the formation of those neurons, and everything that's sort of absolutely necessary to support that. So your heart, your lungs, your liver, one of your kidneys, etc. From one perspective, that is literally what a physical person is.
That's a very interesting perspective.
I don't know if that's what I believe.
So what is it that you believe makes a person a person then?
It kind of, I guess, factors a little bit into my idea of spirituality in general, in that as there's no evidence of God.
True.
But there might be one.
There could be.
He's clearly cold and uncaring.
Accurate. So so you're saying that the brain, everything that makes the brain function, and then all of the organs as well make a person a person.
That is the minimum requirement.
What happens? Okay, let's look into the future. What happens if someone's heart fails? It stops beating. They get into surgery in time. They put in a mechanical heart.
That mechanical part then becomes part of that person.
So that still counts. And then, so over time, they swap out everything except for the brain. All of the organs get swapped out for mechanical, robotic.
Don't even stop at the brain. Replace the brain with a computer.
And that would still be a person.
Why not?
Well, then you've taken away absolutely everything. Like, would that computer that has replaced the brain, what makes that human? What makes that a person?
So definitely human would become a bit of a very stretched term at that point.
Yeah.
But a person, if we set aside philosophical ideas like everything's a simulation, or everything's like a dream and nothing really exists outside of yourself, or anything like that, setting all that aside, a person is the thing that you interact with, right?
Yeah.
All the bits that are required for the three of us to have this conversation boils down to our intelligence, our self-awareness, our ability to communicate, language, all of those things. We could completely transplant that neural network that makes up our brain. If we could make an exact replica in a computer out of ones and zeros and transistors and plastic and metal and stuff, we could still have this conversation and still ponder the meaning of life and stuff like that.
Would it still be the same person? Or would it be...
Theory, if we could perfectly replicate the way that our neurons interact with each other, in theory, you would have exactly the same mind or consciousness.
What is consciousness, though?
As far as we know, as a species, it's that web of neurons. But there may be a missing component that we don't know about, like a soul or something.
Yeah, now with adding the soul into it, that becomes a whole different kettle of fish right there.
Yeah.
Tim, you've been quiet.
I have been.
What do you believe makes a person a person?
I think I'm very much along the similar sort of lines of thinking as Vince. Whereas it's the neurological side of things. So yes, you can change. If we go through the whole thing of changing out the parts for robotic parts, it's that neurological side of things, the intelligence, the memories as well. The ability to think, the ability to interact would make us a person. Will we be human is a different story. But as for a person, you could say that technically speaking, even with a robotic body, you could still be a human.
So what's the difference between a person and a human?
Person, I would say, would be that neurological side of things, whereas the human would be the more physical side of things. If that makes any sense.
So if we're replacing all of the internals with robotic elements to theoretically add longevity to life,
yep,
and extend life, do we still need to have this outer body, this main body, to be classified as a person, or can we then theoretically just upload everything to some kind of a computer system, and would that still be a person in there?
Yeah, because even if you're, take for example VR, even if you're in a VR chat room, you are still dealing with a person. You're just not dealing with a physical being.
So if we boil this right down, we can take, say, consciousness for whatever that may happen to be. We could take the memories. We can take everything or the personality of whoever it is. If we can put that onto some kind of a microchip, put it into a computer with a whole bunch of others.
Yep.
Is that microchip then a person? Interacting with everyone.
The information and the way in which it's presented would make it a person.
But not human.
You're just no longer dealing with a human.
Okay. Vince, what do you believe?
So I'm going to let my inner nerd leak out a little bit here. But
let it flow.
This is kind of what they're talking about in Stargate when they start talking about ascension and things like that, where these characters called, or this race in Stargate called the Ancient, they reached a point in their technological and I guess also theological and philosophical development where they turned themselves into beings of pure energy. They didn't even physically, corporeally exist anymore. And because they were pure energy, they were basically, masters of the corporeal realm. They were the Time Lords or whatever Doctor Who is in Doctor Who. I don't know Doctor Who very well. But, there's heaps of shows and movies and ancient stories and things like that where people can ascend to that level of like godhood. And just because they don't physically exist anymore, we don't necessarily think of them as being any less real. They don't stop being, what's the word you would use? Like intelligent beings, just because
they don't stop existing.
Yes. Yeah, they haven't stopped existing. They've just stopped being bound by the cold explanation of what a person is.
That's very interesting.
So
realistically, the only thing that we need is, for lack of a better word, our soul.
I suppose so.
Like the soul, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, that would, in all essence, make us human. Or a person, I should say.
So a person is a soul, is what we're boiling it down to. A person is a soul. Or the spirit, or the consciousness, or whatever word you want to use for it, that is what a person is.
See, I'm uncomfortable with that explanation because it there's no evidence for it, right?
True.
We can theorize that there's a soul, but we don't know. As far as cold logic, scientific reason can understand, or everything that makes up us as intelligent beings boils down to neurology.
I guess a spirit or soul would be the most basic way of looking at it.
Yeah.
The most basic way of defining it.
This, trying to boil it down to a person is this. This is what makes us a person as opposed to a monkey, as opposed to a Neanderthal or whatever. Trying to boil it down into its simplest form, because this is definitely a question that you could spend hours trying to explain your point of view. But for the purpose of this exercise, we're trying to boil it down into its most simple and basic form that you could tell a 3-year-old and they are going to be able to understand it. How do you go about doing that?
The thing is, you could try explaining it away as the intelligence makes us a person. Well, there's intelligent animals out there. I mean, apes use tools, dolphins use tools, all that sort of stuff. So
do you classify intelligence as using tools?
Not necessarily, but it's one of the common signs of what they consider intelligence is the ability to use tools.
Well, then,
when it comes to being a smart animal, or in some fashion superior to a base animal, tools is absolutely the hallmark of a species that is going to be able to succeed over species that don't do that.
Yeah.
So, what about, say, ants? Do ants use tools?
No.
So would you consider their intelligence lesser than a creature that uses tools?
Pretty much. It's a bit of a shitty way to to approach it, but yeah, I mean, at some point, yes, we're smarter than they are. Most animals are smarter than they are.
Okay. So usage of tools is a sign of, we'll say an advanced intelligence.
Yeah.
So using tools is an advanced way of looking at it. Advanced intelligence.
But then
what about birds that build their own homes?
Well, that's when we'd also have to go back to looking at ants and bees. They build their own homes as well.
So then is that them making a conscious decision to do this, or is that built into their DNA?
Built in.
And just something that they do naturally without even knowing really what they're doing?
It's absolutely built in. Every animal has instinct that are just written into their DNA somehow.
Were you going to say something, Tim?
No, I'm just having a thought. It's all right.
Oh.
Don't hurt yourself.
Think out loud. Think out loud.
No, I need to get the words in order first before I think out loud.
So
we all know this is how my brain functions.
This is true. So if that's built in instinctually and it's something that they do without thinking, What about other? So what about free will then? Do you think they have free will? And more to that, do we have free will? Or is the universe deterministic?
Oof. I mean, oof.
Let's get a little deep there.
I did start this off by saying deep philosophical questions.
It's going to depend. That would really depend on the individual's outlook on things. Yeah, the whole free will versus lack of free will, that sort of stuff. And yeah, it depends on if you believe in fate and karma and all that other stuff on top of it. You could say that yes, we do have free will because it's, for instance, it's my decision to say the words I'm saying now.
Or is that already predetermined that you were going to say those words and I was going to reply with these words? Was that already predetermined?
Well, I know you're going to reply anyway, so that's where you've got to look into the whole thing of...
Hardly shut you up. Sorry.
Well, look at that. You've gone and broken Tim now.
I'm just going to be quiet now. Shit.
Sorry. Continue on with your train of thought here.
It's broken now. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is there then free will if there is that, you know, if we're having this conversation and no matter what, you're going to reply anyway.
But what am I going to reply with? That's the thing.
We know that the reply is going to be there, but it's what is the reply going to be?
Yeah. So is that reply and what I reply with already predetermined, or is that have I got free will to decide what I'm going to reply to you with?
And that's where the whole thing of free will versus no free will becomes a bit fuzzy.
I mean, I've got free will. Have I got free will now to just end this call? Just mid-sentence, disconnect. Well, have I got free will to do that, or has the universe already decided that's what I'm going to do?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Where do you sit on the fence? Do you sit on the fence? Or are you like, which side? Which side are you on? You got to choose the side here.
I sit on the fence. I've got to be on the side of it.
So it's a little bit uncomfortable then.
Yeah, I'm just crushing the jewels.
Vince,
mm-hmm.
Are you joining Tim on the fence, or are you more definitive?
I
like how everything with you starts with a big sigh. You just take this deep breath. You go,
I mean, yeah, whether or not the universe is deterministic is almost a question that we can't answer, right? It's like I don't know if you've heard the idea that our universe is actually a simulation, like a computer simulation, in a 4D dimension.
So what's the difference between 3D and 4D?
So we live in 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. The theory is that we are a simulation within 4D space, one higher dimension that we couldn't possibly comprehend or describe, an extra spatial dimension or an extra time dimension or some other concept that we could never actually label. And it's like our world is projected on the surface of a balloon.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's how you could think of like us existing within a four-dimensional realm of some kind, and we're just running on a computer, and it's like us playing a 2D computer game, you know?
So is it like us playing The Sims?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's some... Is it... Let me try and work out how to phrase this. When we say simulation, my mind automatically goes to a computer game. Is it that there is some kind of a being controlling everything that happens on Earth?
Not directly. So
or is it running a computer simulation program?
The theory might be that these four-dimensional beings created the universe at the starting point, the Big Bang. They programmed that, hit play, and then everything is just a natural consequence of the programming of the simulation.
So if, based on the fact, like, if we assume that that is the case, that we are living within a simulation, do we have free will to do what we want within said simulation? Or is it already on a trajectory and we can't do anything about it?
What is free will?
Well, what is free will?
It's the consequences of, at some philosophical level, you could say that it's the consequences of everything that happened before right now. From the start of the universe to now.
So in the last 13.5 billion years since the Big Bang.
Yeah. Us three dickheads having this conversation is just the natural, logical consequence of everything that happened everywhere ever.
So everything before this current point in time had to have, for the last 13.5 billion years, had to have happened for this conversation to occur.
Yeah. Which makes this conversation unavoidable, but it isn't necessarily what you would traditionally think of deterministic of God said that we would have this conversation.
So we'll use the word God as just some kind of high, but not necessarily God in the traditional sense of God having created Earth in 7 days or whatever it happens to be, and Jesus is the old man and all that sort of bullshit. We'll use the God simply as an easier way of saying a higher being, and you just take whatever you want as God, right?
Yeah.
So God has had everything happen to lead directly to this point, and if something didn't happen in those 13.5 billion years, this conversation would not have happened.
One flap of a butterfly's wings.
Yes. And then this conversation ceases to be. So maybe in like an alternate universe, going on the many worlds theory, that there are an infinite number of us's, and this conversation is happening an infinite amount of times, that somewhere along the line, something has happened which completely negates this conversation having occurred.
Sure. It's almost to the point where I think that the distinction between whether or not the universe is deterministic or not, if free will exists or not, it's so beyond the time scale or physical scale of us as to almost be irrelevant to our existence.
Irrelevant.
Like, it realistically, either way, we would never even know. If we never asked the question, it's possible that nothing about our existence and the way humanity is unfolded it's possible that all just unfolded the exact same way, whether we asked that question or not.
So my theory is that the question was never asked, and the world has both at the same time gone on completely unchanged, but also at the same time drastically changed. That this whole conversation is not a turning point, That's not the right terminology.
I know what you mean.
But yeah,
it's
and
like if an ancient philosopher 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago didn't ask the question, would have humanity have progressed to the point that it has of taking over the planet and thinking about going out into space and curing cancer and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and there's one path where it did, and one path where it didn't. That these two paths have happened, and we just happen to be on the path where someone did ask that question, and everything has unfolded as we know it today. That just happens to be the path that our consciousness is currently on. Our, whatever you want to call it. But if that theory is to be true, the many worlds theory, is our consciousness split up within those different universes? Or is that a separate consciousness?
Now you're asking the real question. Fuck.
So so for anyone listening to this that doesn't understand that, the many worlds theory is that there is an infinite number of every single person, because the universe is infinite, therefore everything has the potential to be infinite, and that there is an infinite number of every single person on Earth just in a different universe going about, and they might do something ever so slightly differently. So where this conversation just doesn't happen, everything else happens, but we decided to stop streaming earlier and we just called it a day and went on with their lives. Like that would be a whole different universe right there. Another one might be that instead of recording this on Saturday, something happened, something came up, and we recorded on Sunday instead. So like that's how minute some of the differences could potentially be. Or they could be completely life-changing differences.
We could be speaking French right now.
We could be. Yeah. Or we could be speaking Danish.
Oh, I like that option.
Yeah, well, if the Vikings back in the day didn't convert over to Christianity and they just continued their crusades and stuck with the pagan religion of Odin and Thor and Freya and all of that kind of stuff, what would the world look like today if that had happened? What would the world look like if Hitler had kept going and hadn't have lost the war? Would we all be under a Nazi regime right now? Or would something have happened where someone eventually would have put a stop to it? What would have happened? But there's a universe out there somewhere where these things have happened. It's just not our universe. I was going somewhere with that and I've now lost it because I just kept going.
That's the problem with these philosophical discussions.
It really is. I was going somewhere with the whole the many worlds theory. And then I was like, I should probably explain it first before I continue on my merry little way. And it's completely gone now. I had somewhere that I was going.
I lost you. I don't know where you were going now.
No, I can't remember where I started that. And listening back to this, I'm going to be like, oh, that's right. I was going to pose this question. This is the question I had lined up. And then, whoop, there we go. Fuck. It's completely gone. It has completely and utterly gone now.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah. Shit. Okay, well, let's change this up a little bit. And I'll just pose a different question. It still relates. With consciousness, there's a theory that a lot of scientists have that consciousness is just an illusion. What side of the fence are you guys on for that? What do you take from that? And does it scare the fuck out of you like it scares me contemplating that?
I don't. It definitely doesn't scare me. I think it depends on your perspective, right? Because what I explained before of, at some level, the definition of a person is just that unique pattern of neurons and how they link together and all that shit.
Yep.
Yes, it is an illusion. It's a accident of biology, of organic things just wanting to be, not even wanting. It's like this natural consequence of just the right elements came together in the right order, and then they wanted to stick to more things, and then just the right combination of those things produced other things, and yada yada yada. We become a single-celled organism, and then that develops into multi-celled organisms, and then we're here. On that line of thinking, it is an illusion.
So our consciousness is an illusion. Based on that, what do you think happens to our consciousness when we expire?
As I mentioned, I think a couple episodes ago, maybe it doesn't matter because we don't know.
Do you have anything more definitive of that other than it doesn't matter because we don't know? What do you believe happens? Not it doesn't matter. What do you think happens when you die? Do you think that it ends and there is nothing? Or do you think that it could possibly, like, your consciousness, something happens, whether you come back as a ghost, whether you go on to heaven, whether you were reincarnated as a fucking leaf on a tree, whatever it happens to be, what do you think happens to that consciousness within you right now when you die? Without saying it doesn't matter, because we don't know. Because this is all hypothetical.
Here's the problem. My thought process stops at that point of I can't ever possibly find out before I die, so I don't really care, I guess.
You don't care because there's no way of definitively answering the question, therefore you just don't care.
If someone could give me an empirically backed explanation of what happens after death that proves one way or another what happens, then absolutely I will start freaking the fuck out about it. Up until that point, there's shit all that I can do about it either way.
Yeah, I agree that there's nothing that we can do to prevent death. That's going to happen to everybody at some point in time, from being in the womb up until you're 120, 130 years old, because they're now looking at extending life for like another 30%. And they've worked out ways of actually doing that, which is kind of cool. But I'm gonna press you on this.
Mm-hmm.
I want an answer, because you're just rephrasing the I don't care, I don't know. Stop rephrasing it. I want it, like, I get that you don't care. I understand that.
Okay.
And I get that you want a definitive answer from someone about what happens. But hypothesize. Just come up with
nothing.
Yeah. So you believe life ends and there is nothing after it?
If I had to give an answer right now, that is the most honest answer that I could possibly give you.
So you believe within yourself that you die and there is nothing else after it. Like
For all the difference it will make to me in this life,
Yes.
nothing may as well happen at the end.
And I know Tim has a very, very different point of view because I'm in the same boat as Vince there. I believe that once we die, it's the same as before we were born. Nothing.
There is an important distinction between believing that and being forced to give that as an answer to a question. I hasten to add.
I also had a theory. This is another one of the theories from the early episodes where I mentioned I had a bunch of wacky theories. And my theory, and it was very self-centered Truman Show style theory, that because I believe with the whole infinite universe thing that everyone is exactly my age because I don't know anything from before I was born. Like, time is irrelevant, and there was no such thing as time as far as I was aware before then. So, yes, I'm talking to you two at your age that you believe that you are now, but that Tim, have you frozen again?
Have I?
Oh no, you okay? No, you've just dropped down to 144p.
Fuck's sake.
It's doing absolute wonders for your complexion. It's great. But because my consciousness, I don't know anything before. Oh, I don't know when I was born. I don't have any memories of that. Thank Christ. But yeah, I just had this theory that everyone's consciousness is essentially in their own universe, and everyone's kind of the same age because I feel like in 5 years' time, I'll have had 5 years more life, more experience. And the whole time thing was just really confusing to me. I was quite young when I had this thought, by the way. Apparently, I was a philosopher when I was, 8 to 13, 14, whatever it was.
Well, clearly you haven't stopped.
No, definitely not. But yeah, I had this theory that everyone's consciousness was the same age as me because time didn't make sense before I was born, obviously. So I just had this theory that everyone's consciousness is in their own world and they are 30 years old. Yeah,
what you're saying
I did say it was sane, but...
So what you're saying is that everyone alive, their life is centered around you.
Technically, no.
Technically no, but technically yes.
Because everyone has their own universe. Everyone that has lived and everyone that will ever live.
Yeah, but then if they're the same age as you, then they can't have their own universe because they're centered around you.
No, but their universe, they are... Yes, it's centered around me, but yet no, it's not because their universe is centered around them.
But then you've got your own age as them.
Well, yeah, exactly. I could be the same age as them.
But then how could they be the same age as you if you're younger than they are?
Because I am my own, my consciousness is within me, not within you. So in this universe, in my universe, I am my age. Yeah. But everyone with the progression of time, no one knows about before they were born or after they die. It's just this small little window.
Okay.
So my theory was, I don't know, I'm probably not explaining it properly, but we are conscious. I don't know when, I don't even know how memories fucking form or anything like that. That's a whole nother thing.
So just to add to where your childhood theory was kind of going and what you're talking about, that is absolutely a theorized thing, is that everything that we perceive is an illusion generated by our mind or our consciousness, or maybe it's all happening in our soul, or however you want to think about it.
Mm.
And for that reason, maybe you guys don't exist. Or maybe I don't exist to you guys. Maybe we're all, in our own little pocket dimension.
Sorry, so we are all figments of each other's imagination.
Exactly.
But
that's
then
interesting.
how are we having this conversation?
You can't overthink it.
Because this conversation is within our own mind.
Yes, but then how are you perceiving the conversation the same as I'm perceiving the conversation? Well, similarly to what I'm perceiving it.
So you would be perceiving this conversation right now completely different to the way that I am currently perceiving this conversation, which is completely different to the way Vince is currently perceiving this conversation.
Yeah, it's not a scientific idea necessarily. It's definitely more esoteric, more centered around the idea that there is something else going on that we can't define or understand or measure physically.
As someone who has a tendency to overthink things, that's a real mind fuck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's why I designed. I have this idea. I need someone that can draw, and can draw well. And that's why the whole point of eating soup with a fork. My thought process of the merch design, like I really want a t-shirt or jumper with this design on it, of a bowl with our logo slapped onto the front of it, and a brain inside as the soup, and then someone like a fork hovering above it with the soup leaking down on top of the brain. Because all of this is just mind-melting shit. If you really put a lot of thought into what we are talking about and the theory, these are all theories. Let's be honest. There's nothing, I don't know if any of this will ever have concrete evidence to go, no, okay, this was the question. Here is the answer. These are all philosophical questions. They're all hypotheses.
Hypothesized?
Hypotenuses?
Hippopotamuses?
Yes, exactly right. They're just, ramblings, their thoughts. They're not realistically, they're not answerable questions that we are posing. I say we, despite the fact it's me posing the question.
Yeah, this is your fault, mate.
I don't apologize at all. And this is why we are drinking. Let's be honest. The only way we're going to get through this.
I think I need to stop drinking if we're going to continue talking like this.
But no, that was my theory way back when I was little Tom. Was that because I don't have access to anyone else's consciousness, I don't have access to anyone else's point of view, that everything I know is based around me. Everything that you know is based around you. You can't deny that. Everything that you know is based around you. Correct? Everything you perceive is based around you.
You're the center of your own universe. Congratulations.
Exactly right. So therefore, little version of me thought that, the universe was kind of revolved around me in a way, but that everyone had their own version of it, where it was revolving around them. I feel like I need to have someone who can phrase this a lot better so it makes a lot more sense. Because it makes a lot of sense in my own mind. I just need someone who has the ability to structure a sentence much better than I.
Yeah.
That's all I need, really.
I am not super familiar with the idea. I know that it exists.
See, I didn't even know it existed when I thought of it. A bit like my own version of the many worlds theory.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed when I thought of it. It was just a random thought, and I was like, that's interesting. I wonder. And then that was the end of the thought process.
Then you wondered too hard and broke your brain.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up here.
Yeah. maybe that's the butterfly effect within all of this, is that I had these random thoughts as a child, and it's now that I'm 30 that I'm bringing them out and discussing these crazy, wild theories that I had that make me sound like a crackhead.
Yeah. Doesn't sound as bad now, does it?
I don't know. It doesn't sound as bad now because I can articulate it slightly better than when I was 8.
Oh,
I'd say slightly.
I was going to say that's be a stretch.
I have more words within my vocabulary now than when I did when I was 8, and I can access those words now, and I couldn't when I was 8.
You'd hope so.
Yeah, that's
You'd
my
hope
theory.
You'd be able to form these at this age.
Yeah. So, Tim.
Yes.
You believe in reincarnation. You believe in
reincarnation, spirit,
all of that kind of stuff. So you believe that when we croak, when we die, what happens to our consciousness?
That's something that I've actually been thinking on recently. Is what would happen, even with my beliefs, what would happen to it? So I'm at the point now where I feel that, can't say I believe, I feel that even if we're not reincarnated straight away, even if we don't come back as a spirit straight away, we go on to almost like a pause or like a sleep, rather than just straight into, oh, you're suddenly reincarnated, oh, you're suddenly a spirit. We go into a pause or a sleep until such a time as we can come back or we're needed to come back.
Limbo. Or something to that idea.
To a certain extent, yeah.
So you believe our consciousness, like we go to sleep, we die, and it's the same as us going to bed for the night.
Yeah.
Except instead of going to bed for the night, you're in bed for an extended period of time, whether it's 3 years or 300 years.
Yeah.
Or 3,000 years.
Yeah, I know it sounds almost like a childish way of thinking about it, but it was the most basic explanation, or most basic way of explaining it that I could think of.
Let's be honest.
Was that we just go into an extended sleep. So our consciousness goes into an extended sleep.
Yeah, let's be honest here. I am not far removed from monkeys. So
speak for yourself.
So I did. I said I am not far removed.
I was going to say I'm not too different from you. So,
so putting things into their most basic form is probably for the best for me, so I can understand these things properly. That's probably for the best.
Yeah. Well, that was another train of thought for me, was how would Tommy understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a whole philosophical question within itself. So, okay. On the reincarnation thing, say you come back in no, not 3,000, that's not long enough. Let's go, you come back in 3 million years.
Yep.
What has happened to humans within that time? What do you think the next evolutionary step is for humans? This is open to both of you, by the way. Feel free to jump in, any of you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Vince, you got some ideas on that one?
What year did you say again?
Say 3 million years.
3 million years.
Sure. Whatever.
Assuming
not necessarily
we don't destroy ourselves by then.
Yes, that's obviously that's part of it. If we can survive as a species for the next 3 million years, that doesn't have to be 3 million. Just the next evolutionary step.
So
in humans.
So there's one really important thing that we need for vastly changing the outcome.
And that is?
We survive, can we develop some kind of fast and light travel? There's a lot of theories going around, like, warp drives and wormholes and all that kind of bullshit, and they all have some foundation in science.
Do you know how they work?
Sorry?
Do you know how those things work?
So the one version of the theory of like a black hole is that if you could somehow get into it, because of the massive gravity and the way that it warps space-time, is that it could actually form effectively a tunnel, and at the other end of the black hole you would have a white hole, which is where, as opposed to black hole, where it's gravity to the extreme that nothing can escape it, not even light, is the opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
So it is a point of negative gravity. It pushes everything out of it.
Okay.
So everything that feeds through this black hole feeds out at the other end as the white hole. And that could be in another dimension or another universe or something like that, if not our own.
So one theory, I don't know if this is, I think this might be wormhole theory.
That's what a wormhole is, yeah.
So the simplest way of putting it is like a bowling ball on a mattress.
Yeah.
And the mattress is time, and then obviously you put something heavy like a bowling ball in the middle, and then where the bowling ball is, the sides are obviously coming up, getting closer together.
It's pressing
and the wormhole
into
is
the mattress and making a dent in it.
Yeah. And then essentially the wormhole is going, instead of, spreading across X amount of distance, you add the bowling ball in the middle, and that distance is shortened, and you can use that to skip through. Is that correct? Something along those lines?
So the idea is that you might be able to, that's one idea where you might be able to fold space over. So if you took a piece of paper and drew a dot on one on each end, the only way for you to bring those two dots together is to fold the piece of paper until they're closer to each other.
Yeah.
So that is one way that we could do it. And that might be one way that black holes or wormholes, if they can exist independently of each other, would help us travel faster than light. Because it's so massive, it has so much gravity that it causes this tunnel to form through space, almost like folding space, like in a two-dimensional sense.
Yeah.
To the point where we could travel through it.
Do you think there could be a time where that's physically possible to do that?
I have no idea.
Because isn't there a whole thing of, if you were to fall into a black hole, it would, for someone looking on the outside, watching you fall into this black hole, there would come a point where essentially you would just freeze?
Sort of.
Their perception of you would stop.
Sort of, yeah. So what would happen if you were to fall into an actual black hole, because the time dilation becomes so incredibly different as you approach that gravity well? As an outside observer, you would see them gradually move in towards the black hole, distort, stop, and then fade away as all of the photons bouncing off of you, falling into the black hole, got, I can't remember if it's red or blue shifted. I'm pretty sure it's red shifted out of the visible spectrum.
And then you would be spaghettified, correct?
Yes. From your own perspective, time would pass normally until you got close enough that the tidal effect would shred your atoms into tiny little pieces and you would die.
So is that when you reach the event horizon? Is that what it is?
You would die long before you reach the event horizon.
Okay.
If we could overcome that, then we might be able to use the black hole to travel. On the other hand, the black hole might not lead anywhere through a wormhole.
So you just come out on the other side of the black hole?
Yeah, so you would go into the black hole, and because of the massive gravity, it would tunnel through to the other end at a white hole, and then you would pop out in the white hole and get spat out by it.
Yeah. Interesting.
White holes are purely theoretical. We have absolutely no evidence they exist.
Okay. So based upon all of that being true and accurate, where do you see the next evolutionary step in mankind?
Yes. So
in Homo sapiens, or whatever you want to say.
In X number of million years, we will either have fully colonized the solar system, we'll have lots of people living in space, and we'll be building generational ships to sail out to all of the habitable planets that we've found with our super advanced 3 million year in the future technological telescope.
The whole generational ship thing, that's a fucked idea.
I mean, it's not that out of reach for us today. It would just require us to cooperate as a species.
Yeah, right.
Oh, cooperation. That's funny. That's a myth. That doesn't exist. But the idea, so a generational ship, is that where you get this group of people here jump on the ship, they procreate whilst on the ship, and then their children do the same.
And then in 100 generations, you finally arrive at your destination because your ship is so fucking slow that even at like 50% the speed of light, it would still take I can't even say off the cuff because the number's so big that I can't remember what it is.
Unfathomable amount of time.
Yeah.
Would there be inbreeding then? Forced inbreeding? Or are we talking like a ridiculous amount of people upon a giant fuck off massive ship?
You wouldn't even need that many people to do it, from what I can very sketchily remember from this kind of idea of generational ships. You'd probably only need like maybe a couple of dozen people if you had really, really strict regulations on who could do what with who.
Yeah, I feel like the whole copulation thing, like, it'd have to be almost strictly monitored.
I mean, at that point, 3 million years, if we use that as the number that we tossed out, we probably would have mastered IVF type stuff. So sex might not be an issue.
That's true.
Probably bang whoever you want, and then they'll just make all the babies in test tubes as you're going along.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. I didn't even think of that.
So either the outcome would be that, or if we've mastered some form of faster than light travel, it would have to be a lot faster than the speed of light.
Yes.
But assuming we could develop some kind of really, really, really faster than light travel, then we would have probably conquered a significant, or colonized a significant portion of the galaxy by that point. If not all of it.
What about people? Do you think humans will have evolved by that stage, or do you think we'll still look exactly the same as what we do now?
We'll definitely have evolved. If we don't, here's a really, really, really sketchy topic and chat to get into. But if we don't start doing some gene manipulation, I want to say just like legal or some kind of morally justified genetic tinkering.
Yeah.
The more that we breed as a species freely without the weak and whatnot getting killed off by natural selection, the more that cancers and genetic diseases and things like that are going to become bred into our species. So we need to, in the next several thousands of years, we'll need to start genetically curing those things.
So basically what you're talking about is CRISPR.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tim, do you know what CRISPR is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
CRISPR is a technology that can be used to edit genes and as such will likely change the world. The essence of CRISPR is simple. It's a way of finding a specific bit of DNA inside a cell. After that, the next step in CRISPR gene editing is usually to alter that piece of DNA, which is a thing at the moment.
Yeah.
So all about, DNA alterations. And do you think that could lead to essentially like Build-A-Bear, but Build-A-Child?
Yes, that is the risk, is that we will get into a situation like in the movie Gattaca, where people are selecting their child's future by giving them a sixth finger on each hand and advanced like musical DNA, or removing all of their health defects and making them really strong and fast and intelligent so they can be an astronaut or whatever, which is pretty unethical, really.
It's exceptionally unethical. Tim, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, as for the whole thing of where will we be in 3 million years' time, with how we're going at the moment, I don't think we'll be around.
Yeah, look,
I'd say we're more than likely not going to exist at all. If we do exist, I reckon we're going to take steps backwards. Yeah, we're just
far backwards.
Well, as far backwards as we need to get to a point where we can actually start again and go somewhere good.
So we're talking going back to hunter-gatherer?
If we have to, yeah.
And then building. So you reckon in order to go forward, we need to take a step back, go back to our roots, go back to where we originated from, that hunter-gatherer style, and then build it back up again, going through all of the steps to be able to get past where we are now.
That was the only way we got to where we are now, is by, during those times, we were more community-minded, I guess. It's probably the best way of putting it.
Well, you had to be back in, especially hunter-gatherer days, you had to be community-minded because you had so many threats to your existence. And if a threat managed to get into your community, that's your community gone.
Yeah.
Whether it be some kind of an animal getting in and wiping everyone out, whether it be the hunters within your tribe can't get out, they don't get enough food, and then you all starve.
Overusing resources, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing now, is we are overusing our resources. So so in my mind, at least, it's a case of if in 3 million years' time we have had to step backwards, maybe that would be a good thing.
So speaking of resources and overusing, do you think that currently, on the trajectory that we are currently upon, that we are at risk of overpopulation?
Yeah, yeah.
You reckon that we're already there?
Yeah, we've already passed that point. And I think we were discussing this, I think it was just one of our chats during the week. We've got to a point now where we're just doing things too late. We're trying to recover things way too late. Whether it be extinct animals, whether it be decline in population of a particular animal. Yeah, sure, we didn't have the knowledge back, say, 50 years ago that we do now. But we got to the point we're at now with overpopulation, overuse, by not returning to our roots. Hunter-gatherers, they didn't stay in the same spot all the time. They were fairly nomadic. They would move around. Yeah, sure, they'd have set camps, but they would move around according to where the food source was. Nowadays, our food source is like, literally right now, I can pick up my phone and I can order food. Well, that's not going to do any good, because that means it's going to put more pressure on things like the fishing industry, on the land in terms of pasture use. Yeah, we're seeing it today where, I'm not talking about global warming, that sort of thing necessarily, but where there was a farmer who was fined recently here in Victoria, who was fined because of the smell coming from his land.
What?
He'd overused it and was overstocking the dairy cattle, that there was so much stench from the land from over stocking the land that he got fined for the smell.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
That's just the sort of thing I'm talking about. Is this overuse of it. There's no, farmers try and graze that paddock for so long, then move the cattle to that paddock, then move, and so on and so forth. But even then, they're literally just doing this circuit, only long enough for, say, the lupins or whatever it is that they plant to grow, to then move back around to the next paddock, and this constant circle. Whereas back in the day, back in hunter-gatherer, the herd was constantly moving. They might only stay in the same place for maybe a week before they moved on. So my view, at least, is that if we happen to take steps backwards, as long as we're not taking bad steps backwards, then we're better off for it.
That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're overpopulated currently, but I do think that the current population, we are going to run out of resources if we don't do something.
That's also tied into overpopulation as well.
Yes, and it is, but I feel like we can do something about our resources. If we can get more resources for food and all of that sort of stuff, if we can sort that problem out, then we're not overpopulated.
Right. Well, in that case, the fishing industry, how do we fix that? How do we find more wild caught fish? Which is the thing. We're meant to be stepping away from fish farming to wild caught. How do we go about replenishing the wild caught population?
You stop all of this mass consumerism. Everyone goes out and gets their own food.
Hunter gathering, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But so in that case then, okay, so as of 10 years' time, we've all got to go out and start gathering our own food. As your knowledge is now, how would you go about gathering food? I don't mean going to the supermarket. I mean actually going out, catching your own food. How are you, Tommy, going to do it? Could you do it?
Honestly, I would do okay. I wouldn't thrive. I would survive, but not thrive.
You'd lose a lot of weight really quickly.
I would.
But most of that's from eating the wrong berries.
No, so what I'd obviously plant my own vegetables, which I feel like we need more vegetable gardens.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
100%. And I'd probably have, I don't like fishing, but I know how to do it. I don't know what fish I can consume and what I can't. So then I'd have to go find someone who does know that sort of shit. And then I'd have a very omega-3 enriched diet.
I was going to say, what about your other protein sources? Are you able to?
Well,
are you comfortable enough to slaughter an animal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe I've got it in me to do what I genuinely want to learn how to do one day. Because I don't like guns. I hate guns. Always have, always will. But I'd love to learn how to use a bow and arrow.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
And I would be more than happy to go out hunting with a bow and arrow. If provided I was confident enough in my abilities to use it and to kill something quickly.
Swiftly.
Yes. I don't want to be a little bit shit with it and shoot it up the ass where it's just going to cause pain and it's going to fuck off. Okay? I want to be good enough where I can wait until it stops moving. Maybe it stops to eat or drink, and then kill it.
Which is usually what you do. You don't try and fire at a moving target, especially in animals. Which wouldn't be a clean kill.
Yeah. Oh, some people may see them slowing down and like they're just sort of moving around. I'm not talking about them at a full fucking sprint, Because you're not going to hit it.
Can I be really blunt with you, Tom?
Okay.
That's a really stupid fucking idea.
What?
Ending our reliance on meat by making us all go out and get our own. Or, veggie gardens, stuff like that. What?
I never said it was a good idea. Just an idea.
Our future rests on being able to completely stop farming any form of meat.
So do you mean
laboratory?
Lab-grown meat, yes.
Yeah. So what do you think about all of this plant-based meat?
I actually really enjoy it.
Oh, you've tried it?
Absolutely, yeah. So I would never have become a vegetarian from a purely animal rights standpoint. Not because I hate animals, but because I like meat too much.
Fair.
And like Carly's in the same boat. Like, meat's awesome.
Yeah, meat is great.
It's just the honest truth of how I enjoy food. But meat is by far the most environmentally destructive form of food that we have. If we can just cut out dairy, beef, lamb, even chicken, all of it, livestock, and fish farming, because fish farming is just gross. If we can cut all of that out and just replace it with lab-grown meat, so it's still the exact chemically and like biologically the exact same meat, it's just been grown in a lab en masse rather than the really inefficient process of keeping cows in a paddock and feeding them and watering them and all of that stuff. That is the future, for sure.
So what is going to happen to all of those animals then? If we stop using them for meat and for the product, what happens to those animals?
So the only thing that can happen is that all of that farmland that's being currently used for cattle either gets returned into forested nature or whatever it was, converted from. We try and convert it back into healthy land. Or it gets used for plant farming, which is significantly more efficient in terms of, calories of food produced. Or there'll be inevitably, and, even in like movies like or shows like Star Trek, where they've completely solved farming altogether and they just effectively 3D print meals on demand with the what are they called? Replicators. Even in that realm, there's micro farming, right? Of people who just want to have like a legit grown meal or legit grown wine or whatever, rather than replicated stuff. So there will always be some like micro cattle farms. Like Australia would probably be a place where lots of cattle farming still exists because we have heaps of open plains and sort of non-destructive ways to be able to keep cattle here.
So what would happen to the animals though? The animals themselves, if we were to go over to that way of that type of food source, what would happen to all of the animals that are currently alive? Like, do you just release them and let them go?
So as we go down this path towards lab-grown meat, if we can get to the point where pound for pound lab-grown meat is accepted and cheaper, they'll just stop forcing them to reproduce.
So basically,
farmers will lose their jobs and their livelihoods. It will happen eventually, and they will, have their last slaughter or whatever, and they just won't continue to reproduce them.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not going to be like a one day. All right, this is the end of dairy and meat farming. release all of your herds, you're banned from farming. It'll never get to that point. It will reach a critical mass point of lab-grown meat or, meat alternatives, plant-based meat, where it just doesn't make sense to farm anymore. And the farmers won't be able to compete anymore. And they'll just switch to farming something else, or they'll go out of business.
The one thing I did hear, this is going back a while ago now, that chickens specifically, because they've been for so many generations, they've been in these chicken coops, and I'm sure everyone's seen all of the footage and photos and everything of how chickens are kept, all crammed in. That they've essentially changed. They've evolved into what we want them to be.
Yeah. Same with cows, same with dogs, all that kind of stuff.
So what's going to happen? Because there's a theory that they can't physically survive without humans, without us doing what we're doing, that they won't survive.
Yeah.
So what would happen to them in that case? Would we just let them go extinct? Would we keep treating them the way that we are treating them?
I think
what would happen?
I think inevitably there would still be microfarms. There would still be open range farms. Like I visited a farm in Tasmania at the start of 2020 that was really cool. That was in the Tasmanian hills, North Tasmanian hills, and they had thousands and thousands of chickens, and they kept them in these big sheds that they moved around based on the health of the pastures. And they had the big white fluffy guard dogs. I forget what the breed is called. That kind of farming is absolutely sustainable. And, those chickens are living just off of what's in the pastures on their own right. They don't get fed grain or anything. So that kind of farming can probably carry on forever.
Yeah.
They'll become a lot less common, but they'll still exist.
So we should move towards a more sustainable farming.
That's the key word. Everything needs to become more sustainable. The way that we produce batteries for electric cars, because we need to stop using fuel. Fuel is not sustainable.
Do you think we could start making factories that are purely electric to create more things that are not use up fuel, use solar energy, use wind power, whatever it happens to be?
It's pretty much where we're already at. A lot of even steelworks and stuff like that, they consume huge amounts of water and huge amounts of electricity, and they very rarely need to produce their own electricity on site, except with like a backup generator or whatever. Or they might use gas for heating up the furnaces or whatever it is. There's only a certain amount of electrification you can do in industry. As far as industry goes, the key will be things like carbon taxes, carbon capture to reduce their emissions, and developing more efficient technologies where it's not possible to electrify.
So what are your thoughts on Elon Musk's gigafactories? Is that the way forward?
That's a hard question to answer. I don't know enough about them. They might be, because obviously you can plaster the whole thing with solar panels, and they could be connected directly into aquifers or use desalination or whatever and be completely off-grid, theoretically. Maybe even in the future, if we can come up with a way to produce hydrogen really, really efficiently, gigafactories could be a thing. But yeah, that's a tough one for me to answer. I just don't know enough.
Tim, what do you think the way forward is for industry?
Oh, well, honestly, I don't know enough about industry to really comment on it. That's the thing. Obviously, sustainability is going to be the big thing, no matter what.
How do you believe we get to a sustainable future? Is it even possible to have a sustainable future? Or are we already too entrenched in our current ways that it's not possible for us to be able to change and get some longevity out of existence?
It's happening slowly. So it could happen, but we've just got to put it, and we've mentioned it before, it's a case of working together. There's too much of this, I'm better than you, you can't do this, that sort of thing. We really need to start working together on this whole sustainability thing, otherwise it's just not going to work.
Is it possible to even work together?
Wow. We're sort of doing it in the current situation with the whole Ukraine-Russia thing, where the world's, we're not in world war, but a lot of countries throughout the world are backing the Ukraine. So there is that, but I don't know if we could actually really just, you even look at things like, the carbon footprint and all that sort of thing. There's all these, there's all these things throughout the year, all these different conferences and that, where a lot of countries tend to backpedal on the whole cutting their carbon footprint thing. So we're just, I don't see us getting there anytime soon.
So
Sadly.
Was it zero carbon emissions by 2050 or something along those lines?
It's only cutting it by 50% or something by 2050.
Oh, okay. So it's not even.
Yeah, it's not even zero, I don't think. Which, just, when you think about it, still won't get us anywhere, really, will it?
It will certainly help delay, but
it's only going to delay it by very little if we keep at the pace that we are. And the thing is that zero, is that 50% overall, or is that 50% of what the total was at the time it was set?
Yeah.
They kind of have to go with at the time it was said.
So in that case, even if you are cutting it, it's still, I'm no mathematician, but in my mind, even if you're saying 50% at that point, it can still climb up, can't it? Even if you're trying to cut.
I mean, it could, but I think
if you're not putting in the full effort, it's still going to slowly rise or rapidly rise.
So I think what they're aiming for is 50% of the current carbon emissions.
Don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something like that, of just a big chunk of it.
Let me look this up.
I'm trying to Google it as we speak.
Okay, I'll let you do it because my keyboard is loud as fuck. And it's very, very obvious when I am typing.
I think from what I'm reading, it's trying to reduce it by 55% of the entire globe's emissions.
So I vaguely remember something about net zero.
Yeah, so plateauing it, which would be we're still emitting a shitload, but we're not accelerating anymore.
Right.
It's not, so it's not even about stopping it.
No.
It's about
just stopping the increase.
Yeah, it's like, it's just how are you supposed to pull the world back from that brink if all that you're doing is attempting to slow it?
I feel like they need to try and get to the lowest possible carbon emissions that they possibly can. Not just stop the increase of carbon emissions. They need to try how low can we get it?
Go back.
Sorry?
Actually go backwards on it, not keep going up. That's what they need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So if their carbon emissions are at this many, I don't know how they measure it. Let's say 100 or whatever. I'm just throwing out a number. Carbon emissions are at 100. What's the lowest possible number that they can get to by 2050 or 2030?
Yeah.
Fuck it. Go for 2030. The next 8 years. Aim big. Because if you're aiming for it's 2050, that's almost 30 years down the track. That's fine. We got plenty of time. They're not going to do fucking jack shit by then. And it's so far in the future that by that stage, the people that have said this will be dead or close enough to dead.
Yeah.
And everyone will have forgotten about it. It's just a fucking cop-out. As far as I'm concerned, that is a cop-out. They're going, we're not actually going to do anything.
Because that's the thing. Who's to say that whatever method they come up with is going to take, say, like 5 years to sort the problem and get it to that 50, cutting 55% or whatever it is. Why not start doing it now so that by the time 2050 rolls around, not only have you cut to that by 55%, but you've managed to cut by 80%.
So what source of energy is needed? What can we use to drop our carbon emissions?
It's everything. It's converting to electric cars and electric transport for everything. Using electric trains, electric cars, electric trucks, electric buses, electric ships, electric planes. They're coming up with electric planes now. It is stopping meat farming because it's so destructive to the environment, not just through land clearing, but also just by default. The sheer number of cows contributes a actual whole percent of total greenhouse emissions. It's like 2% of greenhouse emissions or something. It's just cows and livestock.
I thought it was maybe like 4%. It was something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like less than 5%, but that's less than 5% of this gigantic number. 11 billion, units of carbon and methane and whatever. It's
a very precise number there, 11 billion. Yeah. I like it.
I know what I'm talking about. Shut up. It's everything. We just need to stop doing everything. We need to stop using plastic for everything.
Yeah, plastic's bad. I fucking hate plastic, but it's unavoidable. Like, we eat plastic, literally.
Yeah,
there are microplastics in everything. Absolutely every source of food that we eat has microplastics in it, which is fucked up. It is really fucked up how much microplastics there are in everything. Have you ever seen any of the photos or the videos of looking at food under a microscope?
Mm.
You haven't? Oh, Tim.
I have. No.
Oh, if you weren't looking at the back of your phone for the camera, I would say let's show Tim what the microplastics look like under a microscope.
A telescope.
I keep saying telescope. I don't know why. Under a microscope, because it's quite disturbing. It's really, really disturbing. And you look at it.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and there's so many different ones. Like, you might get a little string of a blue plastic, and then there's a chunk of white plastic, and then some green. So it's coming from all different sources, and it's. I don't know if we'll ever get to eating food that isn't coated with plastic.
Not in our lifetime.
That's where getting it, fresh from your garden is the only way to do it. But even then, you could go, well, given everything that's in the atmosphere, you're probably going to end up with something in your garden.
What about
that sort of thing.
Yeah, when you're watering them. When you water the garden with your hose, or it's coming from the sky, is there microplastics in that? Genuinely, I don't know.
Probably.
But there's, more than likely microplastics in that. So it's getting onto the food that you think is completely 100% natural and void of any chemicals and any plastic, anything. And yet you're still there eating it. You're eating plastics from what you think is completely natural. Fucking hell.
Messed up.
I like how I asked what comes after mankind, and then this is where we've gotten to.
It's a big question.
Originally, you asked what is a person, and this is what we've got to do.
Yeah. So let's move back to the what comes after us. Physically, how do you see mankind just in our appearance, just appearance only? What are the next steps? So we've gone from monkeys, and we know all of the steps up to where we are currently. Where do we go after this? What is the next step for us?
Here's the problem with that question. We've removed natural selection as a factor in our evolution.
We have. So you think this is it? This is the end of the road?
Hard to say. We are like, obviously we've trended to be taller and definitely fatter.
Hey.
All of this stuff over the years, but that's more from like a nutritional, from the advancements we've made in nutrition and good nutrition.
Yeah.
As far as how we're going to evolve, that's huge. It's like trying to think about what factors will play into how we change.
So my theory on that is essentially, obviously this is happening over the course of millions of years, essentially turning into what we, like Hollywood's perception of an alien. So if we can make it, then muscles will be less of a thing. I believe brains are going to get bigger, which means the head is going to have to get bigger as well as a byproduct of expanding brains. And then the bodies potentially will get smaller as muscles are not deemed a sought after quality in a person. And so that will, over the course of hundreds of generations, that will then have an effect on mankind. That's just my personal opinion.
I don't know. I think because there's no evolutionary pressure on us as a species to go in that direction, I think probably more likely is what we'll see is race will stop existing. We'll be so interwoven racially that we'll all be whatever the average skin shade is.
So you reckon we'll all be sort of, let's say, like a light brownish kind of color?
Yeah.
And that will be worldwide?
Yeah.
So isn't skin color based upon where you live and your climate and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah. But genetically, it's whatever the dominant gene is, right?
Yeah.
So we'll all have, in 3 million years, every human will have brown hair and brown eyes because those are the genetically dominant traits. Blue hair and blue eyes and green eyes. And
I feel like blue hair is a choice. Blue hair is a bit of a choice, I think.
Yeah. And like physically, we'll become, the average human.
The everyman.
Because invariably, particularly over the timescale of like 3 million years, the non-dominant gene will very, very slowly get just bred out of the human race.
Yeah. So I feel like, yeah, I don't know. The skin color and all of that, I feel like, I don't know, maybe. I suppose when you think about like all the things like clothing and like the fact that isn't skin color based upon, Africans have darker skin tones to help protect them from the sun, right?
From evolutionary.
Yeah, from an evolutionary, from a general standpoint, it's the darker skin tones protect from the sun, and the lighter skin tones because they don't have as much of the sun. Yeah.
However, whatever the reason is, after humans moved into Europe, it became advantageous to our survival as a species in that area for our skin to lighten.
Yeah.
And so all the light-skinned people survived and all the dark-skinned people slowly died out in Northern Europe.
Yeah. That's a big call, that one. It's very interesting. And I feel like there's going to be, if we were a big podcast, I feel like that theory would create a lot of controversy.
Absolutely, it would.
They would just explode, that one would.
Oh, yeah.
I reckon if you took someone who had a father that was half German, half Japanese, and a mother that was half Hispanic, half African, that person would be what our appearance will eventually converge on.
Wow.
So you're saying if all parts happen to merge equally, that's your vision.
Whatever is genetically dominant.
Whoa, okay.
Brown hair, brown eyes. I think darker skin is dominant from memory, but I'm a bit lazy on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Genes are a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not commenting on any kind of, racial politics here. I'm just saying the inevitable conclusion of 3 million years of intermingling genetics is that the dominant genes will win.
Yeah.
And that's neither a good thing or a bad thing. And, I think white people could use some traits from other races, like the ability to dance and run fast and, I don't know, whatever other super racist stereotypes you want to throw out there.
Well, I mean, is that a racist stereotype to say that
it's still racist?
Black? Is it? Because
genetically
speaking,
let's just stop that one right there.
No, genetically speaking, haven't they got genes that assist in more physical attributes?
I don't think that's the case, no.
Is that not the case?
I believe it's seriously just a stereotype.
Okay. I thought it was like a genetic thing.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I actually don't know, but not to my knowledge.
Okay. I swear I heard it somewhere, and it could be some urban legend. Throwback to our last episode. Tim's fucking lost it.
He's just can I get off this podcast before?
I'm just thinking of something that I heard a racist person say once. It's all right.
I suppose it doesn't bear repeating.
No, it's got to do with the whole genetics and people from a certain country and why they're good at a certain sport. It's all right.
Wow.
You know what though?
Yeah.
From every example I've ever seen, anyone who is of mixed race generally ends up being what is typically thought of within our current zeitgeist as being beautiful. I
So,
would say that.
looking on Google,
It's risky.
Are you getting this from Wikipedia as well? Or
No.
just Google?
in the most comprehensive study of the biological differences between African and European athletes, Scandinavian researchers compared runners in Kenya and Denmark. Their findings confirm what observers have long suspected, that many Africans have greater stamina and speed than Europeans.
There you go.
Why?
I don't know why.
I thought it had something to do with when it came to the Kenyans in particular. It was to do with the fact that, especially outside of their own country, Kenya is at a higher sea level, so their lungs were stronger and built better for running.
So
Could be wrong.
it's
Could be.
genetic variance. That's what it is. So I don't think it's about sea level and all of that sort of stuff. I think it's about the genetic traits.
Yeah, let's just say that comment that I was thinking of had something to do with Kenyans and running,
Right.
Yikes.
and why they can run so much faster.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Athletic performance is a complex trait that is influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. Many physical traits help determine an individual's athletic ability, primarily the strength of muscles used for movement and the predominant type of fibers that compose them. So, yeah, it's definitely, it's not the be-all and end-all, genetics with physical attributes, but it does definitely play a role. Because then you come into the topic of very fucking controversial topic of whether, like, with gender and trans people that are transitioning, say, from male to female, and whether or not they play female sports. Can they play
Oh, yeah.
in women's football? Like the contact sports. Can someone identifying as female, should they be allowed to play in women's sport, given the genetic makeup of a male and the genetic makeup of a female? I'm not talking about you like anything like, oh no, these are my pronouns. I'm not talking about any of that. I am talking scientifically speaking.
Level.
Yeah, scientifically speaking, a male and a female, and the genetic makeup of a male and the genetic makeup of a female. And should you allow a genetically born male to play in women's sports, given their genetic makeups? I'm trying to be very, very specific here, that it's genetics, not anything else.
Not physical or anything like that. The actual genetics.
Guys without training tend to be stronger. They tend to be quicker because of the whole hunter-gatherer thing. It was the men that would go out hunting, not the women. So they've got all of these traits.
If we'd evolved from seahorses, it might be the other way around.
Yeah, very, very well could be if we were evolved from seahorses. Maybe if that happened, then maybe it would be women that would be the dominant gender, and then they would then be like, guys would probably look at them and go, I really don't want any women playing in this sport because they're going to hurt me. Which could be a valid thing if we evolved from seahorses. It would be perfectly fucking valid. And if I played a contact sport, I probably wouldn't want a woman there because she'd probably kick my ass. Just saying. Or you know, you go step into a boxing ring or a martial arts ring. You wouldn't want to go up against a woman, would you?
So I would say that there's no reasonable answer to this question other than coming up with some physical metric that we can use to determine who gets to play against who. Whether we use a combination of height, weight, and some kind of like fitness test score or strength test result or something like that. And then you get categorized that way as to who you're allowed to play with.
That's not a bad idea. I actually like that because my original thought was, we'll take footy, for example. So you got the men's league and you've got your women's league. And then you'd have another league for if you don't fit within the men's league, you don't fit within the women's league, like genetically speaking, then you would form this third league.
Trans league.
Yeah, essentially a trans league.
Oof.
But I like your idea much better.
Me too.
Because that harpens back to when I was trying to join the police force. Being a man, I had my fitness test was XYZ. This is what I have to do. For a woman to join the police force, her fitness test was less than mine, purely based upon the fact that she is a woman. No other factors. Because she's a woman, she doesn't have to do as much as me because I'm a man and I have to do more. I don't think that's fair for joining something like the police force, where a woman, if she's out on the street, she might have to deal with a guy, but she can't run as fast because her beep test was 2 points lower than a guy's beep test. Or she didn't have to do as many push-ups. So physically speaking, she's not as strong. But she's got to go up against this guy, try and take him down. I feel like that's not okay.
It's not fair, objectively.
Yeah.
Subjectively, it's maybe a necessary evil in order to get more women into the police force.
Yeah, yeah. But I've also, I agree, there need to be more women in the police force.
There need to be more women in everything in terms of authority.
Yeah, 100%. But in a real life situation, that's where I feel like the police force may potentially lack what it needs if they've got these women that they've just gone, you know what? You're a woman, we'll help you. There's a chance that they're going to let in people that aren't cut out for it. Potentially. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying there is the chance by dropping the standards. I feel like the standards should remain the same across the board. Because it is for the army. I don't think the army drop their standards for a woman. I think it's just, this is what you have to do. I don't give a fuck if you're a dude, if you're a chick, if you're trans, whatever. I don't even fucking care. Can you do this or not? And that's what it should be for all of the emergency services. That's what it should be. It should just be, can you do these things, these tasks here? Can you complete them? Either yes or no. No grey area. Get rid of the fucking grey area. Either yes, you can complete them, or no, you cannot. Yes, you can complete them.
It's very
cool.
idealistic.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is a good option.
Why not?
I think not trying to capture and bring in that kind of diversity would be to a detriment for police, army, emergency service, whatever.
So should they just get rid of the fitness test?
I don't think there is a solution in the near term other than just having different levels of like minimum physical standards.
So you think they should, you're in agreement that they should, like with the police force, that they should help women by lowering the fitness test, yeah? You think that's a good thing?
I don't know if it's a good thing. I think it's better than the alternative.
So you think it's better than everyone must complete these fitness tests?
If that's what it
Standards.
takes to make sure that there are women within the police force and there are those different voices and different perspectives, sure.
Interesting. See, that's what this is all about, having different points of view, because that is a very polar opposite point of view to me. Because I think they should just have standardized testing of fitness. Just do that. It's not hard, honestly. The fitness test, it's not a lot. It's 5 push-ups. I feel like women should be able to do 5 push-ups, but theirs drops down to 3. So I don't know, Tim. What do you reckon?
That's the thing. Like, we're only talking about the fitness side of things.
Yeah, this is purely based upon fitness, nothing else. Just the fitness test aspect of it.
I see where you're coming from, and I see where Vince is coming from as well. Yes, a female cop should be able to do 5 push-ups rather than 3. But at the end of the day, what if there's also a male who can't do the 5 push-ups?
Then they're not allowed in.
Then why can't he just do the 3?
No, because for guys it's 5.
But if he can only do the 3,
then he's not allowed in because he's a guy.
If you set the minimum standard to the women's standard.
So that would be different. So you do the...
Sorry, go ahead. So
what they've got, the minimum standard for a guy, I'm just using push-ups as the basis.
Yeah.
There's different aspects. But for the push-ups, when I was doing it, for a guy, you had to be able to do a minimum of 5 push-ups.
Yeah.
If you can do more, great. And I was up at like 20 or 30 push-ups when I was training for the police force. So I didn't get to actually do the fitness test because I was a couple of kilos overweight, and they just went, "You're out. See you later."
Yeah,
that was it. There was no questions. It's just, no, we don't want you.
Which their side of things is bullshit.
Yeah, 100%. It's stupid because I could do all of the fitness tests, but I was looking at it, and for the push-ups alone, guys is a minimum of 5, girls is a minimum of 3. So that was the minimum based upon your gender.
Yeah, I mean, what you got to remember is that, and I don't want to get myself in trouble by saying this, is that females are built differently to males. They don't have the same upper body strength. So that would, I get the whole less push-ups. It's only 2 less. And at the same time, if we also move over to, say, the more mental side of things, the psychological side of things, a female is less likely to arc up and use violence, use physical force, than what a male is. Females are also more understanding of a situation. That's why you get leaders like, say, in New Zealand, you have Jacinda Ardern, who has been praised worldwide for her handling of things like the Christchurch Mosque attacks and that sort of thing. It's not just the physical side of being a female. There's the fact that a female is more caring, tends to be more understanding, and like I said, is less likely to resort to violence straight up.
I totally agree.
Whereas as a fella, I'm more likely to punch you in the face for saying something dumb, whereas a female is more likely to go, well, actually.
Yeah, I've said this to other people that if I managed to get into the police force, I would have been fired already, purely based upon the COVID protests. Because I would have gone, you know what, I'm sick of your shit. I've seen you at a protest before. Fuck you. Take out the button and fucking bang.
Yeah.
I just would have fucking cracked and be like, fuck, you dopey cunt.
Yeah.
Fucking done with your shit.
I mean, when it comes to the physical side of things, I'm sure that some of the women that do it will go, I only need to do 3, so I'll only do 3, but in actual fact, I can do 50.
Oh, 100%. See, that's the thing. Women, they may need to train a little bit more to build up that physical strength, but they can still do it. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that women have the capabilities to be able to do the minimum requirements for a guy. They can. They may need to train slightly more, but they can get there.
Well, in that case, that's where you'd put to the police force. Why not do it the same way the military do it, and that is have each individual push to their limit?
So what
To show what they can do, rather than this is what we'd like you to do, but if you can only get to this point, great.
So what they actually do is once you reach that limit.
Yep.
So like the minimum. Sorry. Once you reach the minimum, so everyone doing the fitness test, they'll do. Okay, we're doing push-ups now. Everyone get down. We're going to do push-ups. They'll watch all the recruits doing the push-ups.
Yep.
And they go 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. Girls, you're finished. Guys, 4, 5. Okay, we're done. Move on.
Well, then once again, that's where it should be pushing to your limit, not just okay. Well, the minimum you can do is 3. Well, then if the minimum is 3, then we need to see you doing better somewhere else.
Yeah. So they don't. They go. This is the minimum. That's where we stop. So the beep test is like the 5 on the beep test maybe, and so then once they get to 5, they turn it off and they move on to the next.
Yeah, so it's not a failing in the females that are trying to get there. It's a failing in the actual testing itself.
So here's the bit that I would add to this discussion, right? Objectively, it isn't fair. But what it is, and this is the same thing that's happening in so many other places, is trying to remove the stigma around those kinds of jobs by just getting more women into them.
Yeah.
And then hopefully eventually we'll get to the point in 50 or 100 years where the whole discussion about women's rights and gender equality has reached a point where we don't even need these different rules anymore because there is a diverse enough, spread wanting to join these different things.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree that there should not be a stigma in what gender you are to what job you've got. Because there was even a time where I wanted to work in like essentially female-dominated industries. Being a teacher's aide, I thought about teacher's aides, which is heavily dominated by females. Childcare of some kind, like working in a kindergarten, is heavily female-orientated, where guys are looked upon as, oh, you're obviously a pedophile. Which I've experienced that with my own children, taking them in the shopping center, and you take it that they go, oh, I need to go to the toilet. All right, cool, let's go to the toilet. So you, as a father, you take your child to the toilet, and there are mothers in there because it's generally the mothers at a shopping center with their kids. And then as a dad, you walk in there with your child, you're holding their hand, going, okay, let's go to the toilet. And you can feel all of the mothers in there just staring at you and looking at you like you're about to go and touch that child. Like it's a two-way street. But I don't know. Can that perception change? And will it ever change? Or is it ingrained in mothers with that maternal instinct to just assume that any guy walking with a child is going to do something to that child? Can that change?
So this is something that I think is kind of what we're grappling with as a species at the moment, of now that the internet is ubiquitous, now we have more access to information and discussions and the ability to communicate over all these kinds of topics a lot easier. I think more and more it is getting to the, becoming the case that men and women are able to cross over to what are traditionally, gender exclusive circles a lot more easily. and it's becoming more and more accepted.
I hope you're right.
It's going to be slow and take a long time.
Tim, have you got something to add?
Yeah, I mean, it is something that's hard. It's hard to deal with because, especially if we look at it from a working point of view, when it comes to male and female roles, etc. I work in the retail industry, but I work in a side of it that is fairly female dominant anyway. And it's down to simple things like the fact that I'm used as my predominant use is muscle. There's that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the parenting side of things, I can't comment on that. I'm not a parent, so it's hard to see, your point of view. I understand it, but it's hard to comment on it.
Do you think we'll ever reach a stage where people will look beyond gender?
Well, you'd hope so, especially for something as simple as, taking your kids to the bloody toilet.
Yeah.
You'd hope that at some point we are just like, well, actually, yeah, that's a dad take his kids to the toilet. Okay, cool. So what?
Yeah. Mothers do it.
I already look at it like that. So, it's like it's a dad take his kids to the toilet. If those kids are trying to get away and is sort of giving you those eyes to say, this isn't my dad, this is some creep, sure, yeah, that's completely different.
Yeah.
But if it's literally, these are your kids, you're taking them to the toilet, you're taking them into the changing rooms at the swimming pool, you're doing whatever, it's just your parent doing their thing.
Yeah. I have noticed that when I just walk in with the kid, that's when you cop it. But whenever I've gone in there with, say, a trolley, completely different vibe.
I think it's because there's something to associate you as the parent.
Yeah.
The trolley, or it comes to the pram or whatever. There's that association. Okay, here's a trolley full of groceries. Oh, yeah, I can see, normal kids' snacks and nappies and that sort of thing. Okay, must be dad. Walking with the pram. There's the pram, stroller, whatever you want to call it. There's the nappies, there's the bag, there's the day bag, all that sort of stuff. Must be the dad. But I think it's, when you walk in and there's nothing else to associate with, that's when you're going to get that, what's he up to look?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just out of convenience or what, because there's normally only one toilet in there, and quite often someone's using it, so you just have to stand out and wait. And with kids, sometimes it's difficult for them to wait. Anyone that's got kids knows that. But when I go to the toilet just by myself at a shopping centre, quite often there are dads in there with kids.
Yeah.
And I think, are you in here because it's just where you went and it's easier? Or are you in here because of what happens in the kids' change rooms and you don't want to have that feeling of being watched and stared at by all the mums that are in there?
I'm sure that happens a lot.
So does that mean that in reality, shopping centres should have one, parents' room for males, one parents' room for females? Or is it just that people need to get the fuck over the fact that dads can act like parents too and take their kids to the fucking toilet?
Well, I think what they need to do, first and foremost, when a dad needs to look after the kids by himself, so the mum has to go off and do something, don't say dad's babysitting.
No, it's not.
First off, it's parenting. Dad's parenting. Why was that even a thing? Why did it ever come up that, dad's babysitting the kids? No, you get when both parents want to go out for the night, they want to have a date, they want to do something, then you get somebody outside of that immediate family to come in and babysit. That is a babysitter coming in to watch the kids because both parents are away.
Yeah, I think it seems the whole thing of back in the day when dad would literally only be home from the time that he got in the door to the time he went to bed.
Which, that's me currently.
That was air quotes here, babysitting.
Yeah.
Just, sort of, half-heartedly known as babysitting because he was only he'd only look after the kids for, say, an hour or so while mum was cleaning the house.
Yeah, from like
that was
6 to 8, and that's it. Which is what that's my interaction with my kids at the moment, is usually from about 6 o'clock at night till 7:30, 8 o'clock, when they're in bed and when I'm in bed. That's it. That's the only time I get with my kids.
Different altogether, because you're traveling to and from work. It's not like you're home and you're home at, say, 5 or 4:30 or whatever. You're sitting on the sofa watching TV for 3 hours while the kids are there, and then they go to bed. No, you're actually traveling to and from work, and then but like we discussed, you literally get home, you have dinner, you spend some time with the kids, then they're off to bed, and you're off to bed not long after.
Yeah,
it's not babysitting when you're with them; you are parenting them.
Yeah, and they need that time with a dad figure, like whether it's their biological dad, whether it's a stepdad. Like that plays a huge part in the way that they grow up and the kind of person that they grow up to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This kind of comes back to that whole thing that I was talking about before of we need to kind of force gender equality, even if that means reducing the requirements, physical requirements, to become a cop as a woman. Because we just need more women to become cops.
Yeah.
There's also, breaking the stereotype of the stay-at-home mum or the professional mum and allowing women to have careers and, we're having more stay-at-home dads than ever these days.
Yeah, sort of reversing those roles.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that my ex-wife and I would speak about is if we would end up having kids, who would take on the role of the stay-at-home parent? And because she had the better job, naturally, she was going to be the working mum, and I'd be the stay-at-home dad. And I had no issue with that because it is what it is. You, as a parent, you do what you have to do.
And that's becoming more prevalent now as well. That there are a lot more dads staying home full time, and mums are going out working that full time 9 to 5 job. And dads are doing all the housework and the cooking and looking after the kids and doing school drop-offs and all of that sort of stuff.
Especially post-COVID and post-lockdowns.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
A lot of those dads who were working in the office, and mum was the one who had, say, I don't know, like we'll just use retail as an example of a job where you are there. They might have had a decent retail job as a manager or an area manager for somewhere. They've now gone back to work. And dad, well, he can still work from home anyway.
Yeah.
Especially while the kids are off at, off at daycare or off at school, he can do his job still from home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's becoming a lot more easy, especially like this podcast, for instance. This would not be a thing without the ability for us to video call each other. And that's now becoming a thing for work. It's becoming a lot more easier, a lot more convenient for everyone involved, for people to be working from home. Because I almost view this as a second job.
Yeah, same.
We're not making money off of it at all currently, but the amount of time and effort that I put into the podcasts and put into what will eventually be the videos, I spend a large portion of my spare time on it. Like I get to work at 6 o'clock. I don't start till 6:30, but I spend that half an hour working on stuff. I might be posting on social media. I might be researching something. I'm, commenting on stuff on Twitter, on Instagram. That's all part of the job. And then when I get home, I've got that. I walk in the door, shoes come off. I sit down at the table. I have dinner, and then I go and have a shower. And in that time, the kids get ready for bed, and then I say goodnight. And then I go to bed. And then I do it the next day. And then the day after that. And then we record on a Saturday where I do, before we start recording, I'm working on stuff. And then we finish recording. And I mean, we've got a different process now, but as soon as we stop recording, I'll stretch my legs for 5 minutes and then I'll get straight to editing. And then I'll be uploading. And then I'm posting on social media. And then Sundays I'm doing the same thing. So, having 2 jobs is fuck, that's almost normal. That was never a thing. Like you look back, 70 years ago, back in like the 1950s, it was the mum would stay at home and dad would go out, work, full-time job, whether that's 7 till 3 or 9 till 5 or 7 till 5, whatever it happened to be. And dad would walk in the door, eat dinner, put the kids to bed. So, a lot to ponder there. This has been a very interesting episode for the first episode of Eating Soup with a Fork. Any closing comments from any of the topics from today? From either of you two?
No.
You sound a little bit distressed there.
When aren't I?
Distressed or maybe tired? Maybe like your brain's not quite functioning properly.
My brain doesn't quite function properly anyway, but I think we've just got a little too in-depth for some stuff today, and it's really just going, fucking help me.
See, that's why we're going to do these episodes every now and then. They're not going to be every week. Because if we did it every week, we would just go insane. Could you imagine pondering life and existence every single week?
I think it'd
People who
actually
do
become
that.
productive.
You reckon it'd be productive?
At least for shaping our attitudes and perspective on life and trying to live a healthier and more productive existence overall.
Could do.
Maybe.
Could do. Maybe we do it on a semi-regular basis and see what happens.
Oh, God.
Rather than sporadic.
We do one a month or something.
Yeah, once a month, once a fortnight, we open up and we ask a couple of philosophical questions and see where it goes. Because let's be honest, we started off what makes a person and what is consciousness, and then we've ended with gender equality.
So it's a typical LMA episode, really.
Yeah.
We just haven't come back around to the original question.
That's right. This was never going to be we've got one question that we're asking and we need to get back to said question. This was just a open stage for us to express our thoughts and to possibly learn and grow as people, because that's what it's all about. Vince, do you have any closing comments on any of the things that we have discussed?
Well,
there it is again. There's the big.
So much. No, I don't think so.
All right, and with that closes out episode 1 of Eating Soup with a Fork. Whatever you want to take from this, you take it. You can follow us on our social media websites. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, you can find us on YouTube, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we are on Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Deezer. There might be something else, I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember, because as I said in the last episode, I'm just riffing this from the top of my head. I don't have it written down.
I think there are too many podcast platforms.
There are. But see, we upload to Anchor, and then Anchor distributes.
But I think there are too many podcast platforms.
There are, yes. I think the main 3 are Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. I'm not sure how many people use any of the others. Oh, and we're on Amazon Music as well. I forgot about Amazon. We are also there.
So basically what you're saying is just, if anything, if you're using any platform for listening to podcasts, just try finding us there.
Yes, just search for Losing My Agenda and you will find us. Hit us up on our social media. If you've got any comments about any of the topics that we have discussed here today, let us know. If you know someone that is studying philosophy or is interested in the field of philosophy, let them know about us, get in touch, and we might get them on the next episode of Eating Soup with a Fork. And it could open up a whole new can of worms.
Jesus.
Oh, yeah. It could be very interesting. So thank you very much for tuning in to this episode, and we will see you with our next episode that I have no idea what it's going to be about, but we will see you then. Goodbye for now.